Jim, you've really mixed it up this Sunday. Not that I don't most Sundays. But you've mixed up the Advent Bible readings. After all, we all know that the visitation of the Magi or the wise men to Jesus is Christmas Eve or the Sunday after Christmas or the Sunday after that. And you put it on Advent 1. Let me tell you that the mix-up is intentional. The theme of our series of messages this Advent is, what is the best Christmas story? And we're looking at a variety of Advent Christmas readings, suggesting why each reading should be considered as the top candidate for the best Christmas story. Advent is a journey each year. And if you think of it, it was originally reflected in the ultimate journey of the nativity story, that of the Magi. The shepherds were just in those hills around Bethlehem. It wasn't far for them to come down and find the stable. The three kings were traveling a great distance. There are those scholars who suggested they began in Mary's first trimester of pregnancy to travel across the desert. A huge distance, scholars suggest, from present-day Iraq or Iran. In the same way that God guides us today, no matter how short or long our journey is to Jesus, we symbolically and literally take a journey to the nativity scene on the floor in front of the communion table. And the Magi's three gifts were not what was on sale on Boxing Day. They were chosen for distinct reasons. How can we give honor to Jesus, we ask? What can be our gold, frankincense, and myrrh? Of course, our hearts, our words, our actions can be a gift. We can also honor Jesus by those who are less fortunate than ourselves. And that's what we're about next week, next Sunday, on the second Sunday of Advent, with White Gift Sunday. There's great suggestions on the website, with the service emailed out at 2 o'clock. But the journey of the Magi adds something more. It adds a global dimension to the Christmas story. It shows that the story is not just significant to those in Bethlehem or Israel, but in the entire world. It shows the far-reaching impact of this story. It goes beyond the borders of the promised land. It goes beyond the borders of this church sanctuary in our time. And why Matthew 2, 1-12 could be considered the very best Christmas story, it is because it illustrates inclusiveness, an unexpected worship kneeling at the manger, and a profound symbolism. Let me detail this more in depth. We see in the story the revelation of God's plan. God just didn't wake up one day and think, I'm going to send Jesus. It was part of God's plan. The prophets had told the story hundreds of years before. And we see this incredible journey of the Magi. They were Gentiles, like you and I. They weren't Jews. And they represent the story of Jesus' birth, life, death, and resurrection isn't for one people and one land or one nation. It's for all people, all lands, all nations. It must have been hard work to travel. that distance. But it shows an openness to the message of Jesus. Across the barrens, to follow that star to a manger. The Magi were humble, joyful worshipers who traveled a distance. We contrast the story of King Herod, who was so hostile. He sought to destroy a child. He did an infant genocide. And the Jewish leaders, they were basically indifferent. Jesus, a baby in a cattle stall? To them, he wasn't the liberating hero on a mighty steed with a huge army behind him to throw off the yoke of Roman oppression. The gifts have a symbolism. The gold representing Jesus, kinship. We talked about that. Christ the King Sunday. These were royal gifts fit for a king. The frankincense, symbolizing Jesus' divine nature and priesthood for what? All people. And the myrrh, foreshadowing Jesus' eventual sacrificial death and anointing after the crucifixion. The myrrh, if you would be considered what we might say an embalming product today. Well, the best Christmas story shows the breaking down of cultural barriers. It tells the story of God's love that is for all. The worship in the story is beyond expectation. These three travelers didn't go to the temple. They didn't go to Herod's palace. They went to a lowly stable. It communicates that so often God does the reverse of what we expect. We want to put God in our framework, in our story. We want to make God on the stage that we create. And God just laughs. For God has a stage prepared for each of us. Well, those are just some of the reasons this is the best Christmas story.